Good morning. Welcome to the ENVIROlocity career interview series. This morning we have a special interview with someone I met recently, sort of randomly and through LinkedIn. So when you think that LinkedIn connections don't work, I beg to differ. So thank you so much, Thomas RaShad Easley, for being here. First question, just to start off, could you please just tell us what your title is and a little bit about what you do?
All right, greetings, Laura. Yes, I am the Assistant Dean of Community and Inclusion at the Yale University School of Forestry and Environmental Studies. I've been there a little under 2 years now. In essence, I would say what I do, just to simplify it, I say that my office focuses on diversity, equity, and inclusion, as well as access. And so most of the diversity programming comes through my office, but we also work, heavily with all of the other offices that deal with the functions of the school. That's whether we're dealing with faculty, dealing with faculty relations, faculty work with students, teaching pedagogy, student and student numbers, student experience. And then also staff and staff numbers, as well as staff experience too. And so we work with the Office of Admissions, help with recruitment. And I say we because it's myself and I have my very cool associate Yolanda Quinonez, and she and I work together to work with the students, faculty, and staff. We have a diversity committee that we co-lead, and our students are very involved with that, but it's also composed of faculty, staff, as well as students, so everybody is engaged. And we do work throughout the school as well as outside of the school now. So we take this work around diversity, equity, inclusion, and access in particular out into the community, and we're doing some initiatives out there as well. And I use it all for the purposes of bringing things back to the school, to recruit, but then also to make sure that the work that we're doing is relevant, especially around when we talk about the environment, and when we think about communities that are very adversely affected by things that are happening around climate, as we used to say back in the day, global warming and different things like that. They're still the same communities that we're talking about that we want to bring into our programs to diversify our programs usually. So we're talking about the underrepresented, as they say, on the federal level, African American, Hispanic or now Latinx, and then, of course, Indigenous, First Nations, Native American. So it still comes from that population, as well as we're still working on gender parity as well. So then that means we're still working on how do we recruit and retain women, and of course, many other identities, everything from GLBTQ to even the different types of pedigrees that we bring into our fields of forestry and environmental studies, whether it's from an Ivy League or whether it's from a land grant, whether it's from an ag school, whether it's from an environmental school or a forestry school. So, we bring all of that in, and our office, I think, helps to manage the tension and hold people as we work through these discussions and work through these movements of trying to also think about who we are as a school. And then that I think that really transcends into how the students see who they are and who they're going to be as leaders once they leave the school. And then also the research that our faculty are administering and putting out to the world. So, so I see that our office really impacts all of that. At first, people didn't see that. It's tough because people just think that diversity is all about recruitment, and then they mostly think it's only about students, which in my opinion, I always tell people that's the easy part, really. Because students come in and out. It's the people who are paid to stay, to be there, not the people who pay to be there. Those who are paid to be there, who you really have to work with, because those are either the agents or the allies. They're either the allies who want to bring about change, or they're the agents who hold up what's already the issue there, as it is, and you're trying to bring allies on both sides, because everybody has to grow and change for this to work. So our office, I think, sits at the epicenter of that, and it's not easy, but sometimes it's fun, and sometimes it's something else. So there you go.
Thank you so much for that. Everything that you're working with, it's huge, right? It's big. And I love that you are working at the intersection of all of this, which there are people trying to work towards and do, and are really taking note of now, but pulling in the environment. Often we're talking about them too, like they're separate things. But when you look at wellness and healing and getting out in nature is often the number one thing on that list. So when you talk about underserved populations, that's the thing they have the least amount of access to. So right there, we have a discrepancy, right, and an issue. So I love that you're bringing it all together. I really would like to hear more for myself and for the listeners about how you yourself got into forestry and an interest in nature.
Money. Okay, look. Money makes the world go round, okay? Then let hip hop speak for a minute. If you help provide opportunity for people, make it easier for them to, let's say, take hold of it. That's similar what happened to me. It didn't stay that way, but that's what happened to me. So I fortunately went to a historical Black university, Alabama A&M University. Go Bulldogs! And it was interesting. While I was there, I was an exchange student at the University of Georgia, which is also Bulldogs. And now I work at Yale, the first school of forestry in the world, and it's Bulldogs. So it's just full circle. It's weird, you know. And then for me, being I identify as African American as well as indigenous, and well, I am not identify, but I am. And I'm from Birmingham, Alabama, and so at the time, this was in the 90s. I wasn't really sure where I was going to go as far as my career went. Made a couple of not so wise decisions when I was in high school, and I think a lot of youth do that when they're trying to figure life out and figure things out. I did. It didn't work out in my favor. That's another interview. And so that really shifted my trajectory because I didn't know what I was going to do. And Alabama A&M were one of the schools that were being sought after by the USDA to help to diversify the government ranks, and the federal agencies at that time. Alabama A&M wasn't the only school. Tuskegee University was one. I believe Prairie View A&M was one. Jackson State was one. Tennessee State was one. Virginia State, I'm sure, was one. Maybe South Carolina State. Florida A&M, definitely, was one. Southern, maybe Grambling. Now, the reason that I'm bringing all of these different schools up is because if you look at most of the African Americans that are involved in forestry in particular, but maybe in some of the environmental fields, especially those who are on the grounds working with people, not just necessarily the leaders who are probably in agencies, but I'm talking about people who do things on the grassroots level or, who are on the grounds or frontline communities. Those are the schools that they probably went to. And all of those schools are HBCUs that I just mentioned. So the government had some wise foresight in pursuing them to try to diversify. And I was in the last iteration of diversion of the STEP program that I went through. But that's how I got into forestry in the sense of I didn't know where I was going to go to school. USDA had a program. Alabama A&M was out recruiting people. I applied to the program merely for the sake of making some money, and I wasn't going to school. I really wasn't. I didn't know what I was going to do. And I got in the program, realized that I really enjoyed tissue culture. So I'm also a geneticist too. So a hip-hop forester background. And that's what drew me to forestry was genetics. I really enjoyed tissue culture, and Dr. Rafina Ward was my mentor, still is, and she was at Alabama A&M University. That's how I got started. And then because the Forest Service had the scholarship that they were, offering the people to go to school, they paid for, your schooling, you pay them back with your time. That's how I got into forestry. The experiences that kept me in forestry, which I didn't know, is that I'm also an Eagle Scout. So I'm a boy. I was a Boy Scout, and my grandparents. That was my first exposure to the outdoors. So really, it was the things that drew me to the outdoors as a child is what kept me in forestry and helped me realize that this was a fit for me. I can do this. But Alabama A&M, had to give them credit. It was the HBCU that gave me a chance, and I still holler Go Bulldogs all the time. It just sounds weird because I'm at Yale now, so I can say that, right? But I ain't gonna lie, I'm talking about Alabama A&M maroon and white. That's what I'm talking about, and also UGA, and now here I am, at Yale in a different position. So it's kind of full circle. You go to a school in HBCU, and those kind of schools were formed because we could not come to a school like a Yale, and now here I am at Yale, the school that makes the most Black foresters in the world. Now I'm at the original School of Forestry. So that's awesome. Just how that worked out.
Yeah. So let's talk about that a little bit more. How did you transition from graduating from college? And then is this the first, second, third? Like, how did your career land you where you are now, back in another Bulldog school?
Sure. I think, well, here again, my career, nothing was planned until I was 33 and I'm 41. So that was 8 years ago. So that tells you something. I don't
We were
look,
the same age.
I don't look the age. This lady in Birmingham 2 weeks ago thought I was 25. I was really blown away. I was like, you need a business card. Here you go. Like, yes, yes, yes. And look me up online. Okay, support the 25-year-old while you're at it. But I'm 41. And when I went through the program, there are a number of things that the Forest Service offered. You could work, which I ended up working in Montana, so you would be appointed in different places and then you would pay your time back, by working with them. So fortunately, it worked out, in some ways where I got experience working in Bozeman, Montana, and also working in Red Lodge, Montana, being a forestry technician. GS7, I think when I left, I was a GS9, I think. But I knew that I still wanted to go into genetics. And so from that, I left there and went to graduate school. I went to Iowa State. Dr. Rick Hall was my major professor. Go Cyclones. And that's where I went and got my master's in forest genetics. And but there was something missing when I got to that point. While I enjoy working in the lab, around my master's is when I really started caring about what was going on with people and how people learned and what people wanted to do. And I wanted to know that people understood the science that I was doing, because I was really more so community driven. I wanted to get involved in genetics to, generate our own timber so that we don't have to use our natural timber to help supply, products for us in the future, which I think that there's some still doing that, especially around mass timber, building now. There are a lot of discussions around that because population is not getting smaller. So I was thinking that back in the early 2000s, and caring about how people learn. I added something to my master's, like a history and a philosophy perspective to it. Got deeper. When I graduated with my master's, that's what I wanted to go into more, but I couldn't articulate it. I want to get more into the human experience now, okay, instead of just the trees, instead of just STEM, if you will. And so I did some work in urban forestry. Became a GIS GPS professional for a nonprofit. Ended up working for Auburn University. So I grew up in Alabama, an Alabama fan, and I ended up working for Auburn University. That messed with me. Working for the War Eagles, it shifted things around for me. Like, oh man, So I've always lived in the gaps. I feel, even though jokingly talking about football, I'm also talking about my career and my life. I ended up at NC State University as the diversity director in the College of Natural Resources, and that is really where I think the experience that I had in working caught up with the experience of working in academia, because to be in Montana by myself the way that I was, it took a certain kind of resilience to do it, a patience to do it, a thick skinness. I just made up a word in order to do it. And then I get to NC State and they want to recruit people that look like me, and also people that look like you, into the field. And so in academia, most people study what other people, write. They study what other people do, which is cool. I do the same. I am a scholar, but then also have to go off of my lived experience. And I think that is what got me to where I am. And so then that's why I had to take you back through undergrad all the way up, because that is what informs how I exist now in this space. Right. I could exist somewhat peacefully in the Pacific Northwest by myself. I could exist in the Midwest in the department by myself as the only Black person. I could go to an HBCU where there still weren't a lot of Black folk in the major, and then go to UGA, do that by myself. And so, but I don't mean like I made it by myself. I mean, I'm in this space where it's either me or it's just a few of me. And so I had a peaceful experience for the most part. The question is, how do you do that knowing that you're in an environment that wasn't built for you? And so that's what I now kind of work and teach people now, because that's what I think the younger generation doesn't have. I'm fortunate that I was raised with and by my grandparents. So I have the older generation in me too. Then I was raised in the 90s, hip hop, Tupac, Biggie. So I was raised in that time too. And then I was cultivated in the early 2000s when I'm actually doing it. And now in 2019, there's a reason why they can't tell me anything. So yeah, that's how I got here. Lived experience and being a scholar. You let me know
That's
however else I
true.
can fill that in. For everybody listening, I'd be happy to fill more in if they have any other questions.
Yes. Let me tell you, this man has things to say. We only have about 20 minutes to say them today, but we will talk more. And I also, I feel like a lot of this bleeds over into my day job and my business consulting. So there may be space to have more conversations there as well. But as a career coach, I even still feel, I want to work in spaces where I have an open door for everyone. The people I have been working with, probably representative of your college experience, but everyone still deals with confidence, trying to translate what they've been doing on their journey and then as they grow, how to shape it and move it forward and how to do that. So what kind of advice do you have? Your journey shifted and took different turns, and you're even now at a place where probably look different 5-10 years from now. So what advice do you have for people? You mentioned resiliency, like to navigate that and to stay in the game and to be motivated to keep moving forward, even if you might be doing something and then realize like, this wasn't what I thought it would be.
Okay, I'm gonna look at the time, make sure I keep myself brief. So I know we got 20 minutes. I'm gonna try to keep it at 17. Make sure that we can keep going. Well, all of my experience is what feeds what I say. I have to say that because academia really does impact how I respond now. And like when I answer your question, some people are going to be like, how did he come up with that? So I'll say this, I come from a civil rights family. My family was rooted in the civil rights movement. My uncle, Reverend James Orange, is the reason that people even know about the Selma March, walking across Edmund Pettus Bridge, the Bloody Sunday. That he was one of the reasons that happened. Okay, and then my mom also, was involved in that and went to jail fighting for the right to vote. So I'm not scared of anybody, because I come from that kind of family. Then the other thing is I'm a hip hop artist, right? So I know how to work an audience and work with an audience and bring people in. And then the fourth thing is I was a campus pastor. Man, and out of every experience that I just mentioned, that taught me the most. When you're a campus pastor, you really get to see how beautiful people can be, but how they don't see themselves. Okay, so then your question was, about
loaded. Motivation, resiliency,
motivation,
navigating.
resilience, like all of that stuff. Okay, so then I have had to learn how to embrace myself when I was in those spaces. Okay, there were things that I wondered why there weren't more people in Montana that looked like me, but I was like, why am I going to ask the people here who don't look like me? Mm-hmm. Maybe it's not my job to figure that out. Maybe it's my job to just understand how to exist here and figure out how to be here. And that's what I did. I take that perspective, especially when I go to a place that I'm new and I don't know the rules. So that's what keeps me, is I have to learn the place before you try to implement anything. I think that's the mistake of a lot of people, especially some of the young activists now. They think activism is just disruption, and it is not only that. Activism is also success too. So figure out how to be successful and also take care of yourself in the process. I had to do that. That's why I mentioned the civil rights part, because that's what strategists do. They understand that when you make a move, cowards don't want anything to happen to them. Okay. Real people know something's going to happen and they don't want it to happen too. You see? So I have to be a real person. I'm like, okay, so I have to set myself up. The pastor part is very important because I learned when you have people come into a space and they all think that they believe the same thing and come to a space where it's really about love and embracing so we can be better. And when people come in with low confidence, and that's what I saw, I see that that's really what the majority of the world struggles with, is insecurity and low confidence. And I'm like, wow, but they're here portraying confidence. So the other thing that I had to do, because I've been in so many spaces where I lived in the gaps. As I said, I identify as indigenous as well as African American. So I'm either not indigenous enough. There are times I wasn't black enough. I was raised with my grandmother. So a number of things I do that challenges masculinity. So I wasn't tough enough. But if you cross me, you find out that I'm tougher than you thought I was going to be. Sometimes when I speak, my colleagues speak very, what some would say, like more so in an academic, and I do both. I do what Obama did. I speak both academic as well as my culture, which I think my culture is academic, and if you look at my history, it was stolen anyway, so it's all the way academic. And I'm unapologetically Black. So I've worked in gaps anyway, and that's how I do it, and that's how I stay resilient. And for the people who want to work in the solids, what I mean is I just want to be one identity. They're the ones who are struggling the most right now, because too many of our identities are intersectional. So I have to do this professionally, and I can't do it professionally if I'm not doing it personally. And everything that I've experienced led to where I am right now. And that's why I had to take people through that, like walk you through it like that. And I did it in under 3 minutes.
You got it. So yeah, I love that. I have some friends and some colleagues who live in some of those gaps as well. And it's interesting to see. I keep hearing that come up as a cross-cutting theme, as well as some other things like men's mental health and depression and dealing with things. So let's see, back to my questions. You talked about recruiting people. So if people watching are interested in the environment, like what you're saying about the way that Yale operates and the culture there, and they're interested, what's their best avenue to reach out, talk to you?
Well, they can email me, thomas.easley@yale.edu, Easley, Easley. I'm very approachable. I think when people first meet me, one of the things that I learned is how to make sure that I lean into whoever I meet. So I also want to give this to people who are interested. Yale is a very historic place. I mean, it was established before the country was. Let's let that sink in. It was established before the United States of America was established or stolen, if you actually know history. So, I'm at a very powerful place. It's powerful. Like, let me call it what it is. It's powerful and it's historic. And I find it fascinating for anyone to come to an institution like that with that kind of history, thinking that they are going to come to an HBCU, or anyone who comes to a place with that kind of history thinking they're coming to a Hispanic serving institution. I want people to open their minds and learn some history before you come on that hill. Okay, and I'm not saying that to make the place look bad, because I'm not. I would say that if you were going to an HBCU and you've never been around Black people, then you need to wisen up and learn something before you show up on the hill. How about that? And Alabama A&M is also known as the hill. Anyway, so pun intended. And so I tell people, you need to know who you are before you come. Don't come to a place like that and then figure out who you are.
Right.
You should know who you are before you come to a place like that, because that place is this place is too established and been around too long for people to just come in here and think that they can shake their individual weight to move such a big yacht like this. And if you have not existed on a yacht and been like that, don't come in and try to shift your weight, because then your weight's gonna fall back on you. So that's one of my things that I share with people, is that I want them to really be mindful when they come to an institution like this. But that's the same advice I would give anyone going to any institution. You learn the institution first. Learn how you operate and fit within the institution. Even if you don't fit, figure that out, so that when you start making moves, you can better manage yourself. Because there are many people who want change, but they don't realize how they contribute to destruction or setback because they have not figured out who they are, how they move, and gotten their strategy together.
Absolutely. Totally agree. I preach this just to the people who I work with also, in that the fact that they need to look at their own values when they're applying for jobs. Often, they're upset they don't get the jobs that they apply to. And a lot of times there's a reason. And a lot of times it might be because you're not aligned with that place you're trying to get your foot in the door anyway. Mm-hmm. A job isn't just a job. And especially when you're looking at the environment and trying to make change and do something different, it's important to really vet the places that you're trying to apply for a job. Yes. I know it's important to get a paycheck, but yeah.
We all want to survive, but how you survive, that's why being an entrepreneur is also a big part of what's taught me too. When I started my own LLC and started learning how to move with that and keep it afloat, and when you're working with people, I started figuring out how people are full of you-know-what, and how people can also be very motivated, and how the same people can be the same thing at the same time. And when you start getting involved in business, the same way that you get involved with a job, you start figuring out that mostly everybody comes to the table after what he or she or they want. And so then if you want to get engaged in bringing about change, then you have to understand that some of that change that you're trying to push, there's a part of you that needs to understand that people don't want it. And I think that's how I stay maintained in this whole diversity space, is I understand that there's a certain part of this change people don't want. And this isn't just about race. This is about gender identity. This is about gender expression. This is about socioeconomics. This is about sexual orientation, religion. There's a part of all of us that doesn't want something to change. So when you work in business and you start making your own, I think that shifts your attitude. And you go, how did I make that? I had to make that to work with the other person. So then you realize you don't show up in the space arrogant, thinking it's supposed to go the way you want it to. Wise business people figure that part out. So that's also why the business part is important too. So that's why I talk to people about strategizing, because in the end, even if your business fails, it's so much better when you've taken care of yourself and you can deal with it. You see, and that's the mental health part. That's the protecting the heart part. So, and also, I'm not one of those gentle folks, who's like, oh, because people have challenges, oh, let's not push. I'm like, shoot, please push the gas now, because I'm like, we don't need weak people who can't move. I need some resilient people who can actually get something done. I'm speaking to you, not even 100%, and I still am not scared. So that's what I go after. I'm like, I don't need people coming in here like, ooh, we want to see change, but I'm scared at the same time. I'm like, you need to make up your mind what you're going to be. You're going to be a loudmouth that knows what he or she or they is talking about, or you're going to be the person that needs someone to look out for them. And if that's what you are, part two, then I don't need you in line with me, because that's not how we move. You need to sit back there and figure it out first and then come up.
All right. That's how it is. So before we jump off, no, you're all good. Say what you need to say. And you're leaning towards the diversity and inclusion, but I'm hearing also the same parallels for the environment.
Yeah.
If you want to make change in the environmental field, there are people who don't want it. They don't want to hear it either. They're sick of people. Like, I'm looking at someone, they gave me a straw at lunch today, and I was like, why? I didn't ask for that, but she doesn't want to hear me complain about her giving me a straw. Like, she doesn't get it. So there's twofold in that. So let's take that back to, we didn't talk about hip hop forestry yet, and we need to do that. So let's hear it. How did hip hop forestry come about, and what are you doing with it?
Started out as an idea that was turning. Now we're kind of developing it into a curriculum. But the idea came because of recruitment, and came because of the talks that I was giving when I would go and try to get a crowd's attention. If I'm trying to get someone to be interested in forestry, and I'm talking about a middle schooler or a high schooler, I could show up and have something to say about goods in the woods, or I could open my mouth and then just start rapping like, here's my minority report about what's going on with the poor. No clean water, got liquor stores. No banks get housing, can't afford. The kids just zoom in like, you got bars? Wait a minute, who's this dude dressed up? And then when it's over, you drop the mic, and then now they're like, okay, everybody either claps, but they're still like, I thought this dude was a dean. Wait, what is this? I thought it was a fort. What? Then you go back and you explain to them, how did I write what I just said? So then you teach them the importance of education, and you also teach them the importance of paying attention to their community, because I'm talking about my community. I'm talking about where I came from. I'm talking about my neighborhood, actually, and you all can do the same thing. So when I started noticing that they responded to that, that's what intrigued people to want to come into the school that I was working at. Then when people started signing up for my classes, and people said they were signing up for my class because I rap, they were like, yeah, we just wanted to take this class because, we heard your CD. And I'm like, you heard my CD? The class is diversity and environmental justice. You're not here to talk about environmental justice? Well, you rap about environmental justice ever so often, but you always rap about diversity. I'm like, yeah, I always do that. So then I just started putting two and two together and was like, man, I could probably attract people who do and don't look like me by bringing two communities together, the hip hop, which operates one way, in the forestry. So then I just made a song called Hip Hop Forestry after I started working here, where it was more about a philosophy. And it's a philosophy that infuses diversity, equity, inclusion, and access in it. One of the lines is in hip hop forestry, you can't own what you didn't create. That's why land ownership is a funny term to me, to be honest. Because the planet owns us, not the other way around. And if sea rise isn't helping you to see that, then I don't know what you're looking at, you know. But anyway, and I laugh like that. It's very easy. You know, it's like I say it and then I walk away and say, you just think about that and you figure it out. You know, the proof is there. For those people who don't believe in climate change, I'm like, okay, that's fine. You notice how we don't have as many forests around anymore? Just look in your backyard. You know, then when the idiocy gets through, you go, okay, now let's have a conversation. And you don't back down from people, but you also don't use that word I just used if you're trying to bring people over. I do that when I'm talking to like-minded people. And I admit that. That's why I don't mind people using sometimes offensive, somewhat terms when we talk about DEI, because I'm like, people talk behind closed doors all of the time. So, you know, that's how hip hop forestry came to be. The idea, the philosophy, now turning into a curriculum. We're doing some work now here in New Haven around hip hop sustainability and environmental justice. We're working with helping folks in the community monitor their own air and water. And that philosophy of how we got like that is how we did it. We go to the community. They tell us what their concerns are. Remember, we don't own what we didn't create. So we don't walk into a place trying to tell people what they need to know. We walk into a place letting people know if we're invited to the place, we're here to help. And if we can be of use, please let us know. And our relationship is forming. That's how hip hop forestry works. It's not an idea. It's more so it's an action. It's how you show up. Think about other people first and the environment first.
I love it. So you talk about when you come up, you show up to the middle school and do a talk and they're like, well, who's this guy? Your LinkedIn profile picture. When I actually started looking at your stuff, that was my reaction. Wait a minute, who is this guy? That's not, your LinkedIn picture is not representative of what I saw in those videos and the message that comes through, but it's just a picture, right? But it's a combination of picture and the title.
Yeah, gotta draw them in.
But for anyone watching, we're going to have the link to that video in the description on YouTube so you can check it out. It's amazing. What really spoke to me in that was when you were talking about the forest being a connected community and system and humanity being part of that. I think your work and bringing that message to people who need to hear it and as an avenue to bring them just to go, wait, what? Environment? It's okay. It's cool. I should be listening. They're trying to figure this out. Is really important and it's awesome. And for career seekers, because that's what we're ultimately here for in the series, is you can see how taking this passion you have, taking it along with you on this journey and seeing how it goes, and then turning it into something that is yours, that you can use. It's getting you attention. It's, you know, who knows where this will take you in your future. So for, I'm more than a career coach. I'm trying to help people build their lives around work that matters and work that makes a difference. So I'm always encouraging people to do exactly your prime example of what I want people to do is not only go after a job, but to make it something their whole life. So something that you're passionate about, make it yours and do something that you don't think already exists or feel some need that needs to be out there filled. So it's an amazing, awesome example of that.
Thanks.
So we're way over time, but hey, it's my interview series, so we can do that. I thank you so much for being here. We do need to do our lightning round questions though.
Okay.
So first one's orange or purple?
Purple.
Oh. No take backs.
Yeah. My grandfather would, because my family name is Orange, so that's why I just went, wow.
Oh. iPhone or Android?
iPhone.
Pines or oaks?
Oaks.
East Coast or West Coast?
East Coast.
And recycle or repurpose?
Oh, man.
Oh, you got to just spit it out.
That's a good one. I mean, what I initially was just going to say repurpose. I was actually going to say that. I'm going to say repurpose.
Repurpose it is.
Yeah, because I think I can repurpose. Recycling, I can do that in repurposing.
Right.
Yeah. Shoot. Okay. did you ever give people a chance to explain why they say the answers that they choose?
Not really.
Oh, my gosh.
Not really. Someone can contact you.
Jeez, okay, because I know my family going to talk about that purple orange one. Oh, that's not going to be cool. Ooh. Okay.
We'll talk offline.
All right.
So thank you so much for being here. It's awesome. It's great information. Everyone who's watching, again, these are posted on YouTube. Please hit the subscribe button so that you can be notified when we have future ones. Dr. Thomas RaShad Easley, please, thank you so much for being here. If you have any other stuff you want me to share, put in the description, let me know after the fact. We'll make sure that it's out there for people.
All right.
And yeah, we're hoping to have a lot of these interviews and to have a whole series of them. So if you know someone you'd like to be interviewed or topic subject, just hit me up, let me know, and we'll see you next time.